Have you ever noticed how some people only seem to remember the worst parts of your story? No matter how far you've come, how much you've changed, or how many battles you've overcome, they still bring up who you used to be. If they keep bringing up your past, here's what it really means. They don't mention your growth. They don't acknowledge your healing. They just keep circling back to the version of you that struggled, made mistakes, or lost control. But why? It's like a wound that's finally healing until someone walks by and scratches the scar, just to see if it still hurts. Or like chains you broke long ago, only for someone to quietly gather the pieces and try to wrap them around your ankles again. Because some people aren't truly interested in who you are now. They're attached to who you used to be. Your evolution challenges everything they haven't yet faced in themselves. And while they're busy dragging your past into the present, you have a choice: defend the old version of you, or walk boldly in the new one. When you choose growth over guilt, that's when the discomfort begins for them. So how do you deal with people who won't let go of your past? Stick around, because by the end of this, you'll understand the truth behind their behavior, and more importantly, you'll know how to rise above it. Let's begin. Number 1. They haven't healed themselves. One of the most revealing behaviors is this: people who constantly bring up your past. They remind you of who you used to be, the mistakes you made, the words you said, or the actions you took when you were in a different place with a different mindset. And no matter how much you've grown or moved forward, they still hold you hostage to an old version of yourself. At first, it might feel like they're just being honest or keeping it real, but the truth goes much deeper. When someone can't stop bringing up your past, it's rarely about you. It's about them. Here's the truth. Instead of accepting your growth, they're clinging to the memory of who you were, because they haven't healed themselves. They haven't moved on, so they don't want you to either. Your progress becomes a trigger. Your healing reminds them of the parts within themselves that still need attention. And instead of facing that pain, they project it onto you. They anchor you to your old identity so they don't have to confront the discomfort of your transformation. This is where Stoic wisdom steps in. Seneca said, "He who clings to pain cannot walk forward." Think about that. If someone keeps dragging your past into the present, it's because they're still carrying pain they never dealt with. It could be resentment, jealousy, guilt, or even fear that they'll be left behind if you keep growing. But whatever it is, it's not yours to carry. Let me share a story. A woman I know, we'll call her Illa, went through a rough patch in her early 20s. Poor choices, toxic relationships, and mistakes she wasn't proud of. But she worked hard to change. She went to therapy, rebuilt her life, and found peace in who she was becoming. Yet every time she ran into people from her past, especially one childhood friend, they'd bring up her worst moments. "Remember when you used to?" Or, "Wow, never thought you would get it together." It was always said with a smile, but it cut deep. Eventually, Illa realized something important. That friend wasn't trying to reconnect. They were trying to remind her of a version of herself she no longer related to. Not because they cared, but because her growth challenged the image they had of her. And more importantly, it challenged the image they had of themselves. So how do you deal with people who keep bringing up your past? First, don't argue with them. You don't need to prove you've changed. Your life already shows it. Second, protect your peace. You don't have to keep relationships alive just because they've been around a long time. And third, walk boldly in your growth. You're not obligated to carry old baggage just because someone else refuses to let go of it. At the end of the day, your past was a chapter, not the whole book. And if someone keeps rereading your old pages, that's a reflection of where they're stuck, not where you're headed. Keep growing, keep healing, and let them stay behind if that's what they choose. You're not there anymore. Number 2, they use your past to control you. Let's talk about one of the most subtle and manipulative reasons someone keeps bringing up your past. They use it to control you. It's not about helping you grow. It's about reminding you of who you were in a way that makes you feel small, less capable, less worthy. They see that you've moved forward, and that unsettles them. So what do? They weaponize your history. They bring up your lowest moments not to help you heal, but to keep you tied to them. Not out of love, not out of friendship, but out of guilt. Here's the truth. Bringing up old mistakes is a tactic, a tool, a way to keep you feeling unsure of yourself. If they can influence how you feel, they can influence what you do. That's emotional leverage. You might hear things like, "Don't forget where you came from," or "After everything you've done, you think you've changed." These aren't reminders, they're chains. The goal is to keep you in a state of emotional debt, where you're always trying to prove you've changed, always trying to earn their approval. But that's not growth, that's submission. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes powerful. Epictetus said, "Do not hand over your peace to the judgment of others." Because the moment you allow someone to define your worth based on your past, you give them control over your present. And when someone has that kind of control, they'll shape your choices, your confidence, even your identity. But here's what you must remember. They only have as much power as you allow. Let me share a story. A guy I know, let's call him Jason, had a family member who never let him forget his past. Years ago, Jason had made some mistakes, taken the wrong path a few times, but he turned his life around. He got help, found clarity, rebuilt his career, and became a version of himself he could be proud of. Yet every time Jason tried to move forward, that family member would drop reminders of the past. "Be careful, we know what you're capable of," or "Just don't mess it up this time." And for a while, it worked. Jason would shrink back, second-guess himself, and feel like no matter what he did, he could never escape the shadow of who he used to be. Until one day something shifted. He realized that if someone refuses to see your growth, that's their blindness, not your truth. He stopped defending himself. He stopped letting guilt make decisions for him. And the moment he reclaimed his peace, their words lost all power. So how do you deal with people like this? Recognize the manipulation. Anyone who uses your past to make you feel ashamed of your present is trying to control you. Refuse to argue. Your transformation doesn't need their validation. Protect your peace. You are not who you used to be, and you're not here to be held hostage by someone who can't accept that. If this resonated with you, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful insights. You deserve to grow without guilt, and your future deserves to be shaped by your strength, not someone else's memory of your mistakes. Number 3, they fear your growth. Let's talk about one of the most uncomfortable reasons someone keeps bringing up your past. They fear your growth. They see you changing, evolving into someone stronger, wiser, and more confident, and that unsettles them. Why? Because your growth forces them to confront something they don't want to face, their own lack of progress. Here's the truth. Your transformation threatens their comfort zone. So what do? They try to drag you back into the old version of yourself. Not because they care about where you were, but because they can't handle where you're going. And if they can keep you trapped in your past, they don't have to confront their fear of being left behind. Marcus Aurelius said, "The one who seeks your past fears your present power." And that's exactly what's happening. Your rise reminds them of their own stagnation. Instead of growing with you, they attempt to pull you down because it's familiar, because it's safe. But here's the thing. You've outgrown the version of yourself they're stuck on, and no matter how many times they try to rewind the story, you're not going back. Let me share a story. A guy I know, let's call him Eric, grew up in a tough neighborhood. In his youth, he made mistakes, got into trouble, but over time, he completely turned his life around, got a degree, started a business, built a life he was proud of. But whenever he visited old friends, the same comments always came up. "Remember when you got arrested, man? I never thought you'd get out of that mess." At first, Eric laughed it off, but eventually he realized they weren't just reminiscing. They were anchoring him to a version of himself that no longer existed. Not because they didn't see his growth, but because they feared it. His progress reminded them of what they hadn't done, and the only way they could feel better was by trying to make him feel small again. So how do you deal with this? Understand, it's not your job to shrink so others can feel tall. Stop explaining. Your life already proves your growth. Keep moving forward. The people who fear your evolution were never meant to grow with you. Number 4, they refuse to accept the new you. Let's talk about one of the most frustrating parts of personal growth. Some people will refuse to accept the new you. You've evolved. You've worked on yourself, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, but they still treat you like the person you used to be. Same jokes, same labels, same criticism, as if none of your growth ever happened. Why? Because your transformation disrupts the role you used to play in their life. And for them, it's easier to hold on to an outdated version of you than to evolve themselves. Here's the truth. Some people prefer the old version of you, not because it was better, but because it made them more comfortable. If they acknowledge your growth, they have to question how they see you. And more importantly, they have to question themselves. This is where Stoic wisdom speaks loudest. Epictetus said, "You are not bound to who you were. Grow with reason and let the past be dust." You don't owe anyone the past version of yourself just because they liked you better when you were easier to control, easier to laugh at, easier to doubt. Your transformation is not the problem. It's a result of strength, of intention, of becoming the person you were always meant to be. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Emily, spent years working on herself. She overcame deep anxiety, left a damaging relationship, and stepped into a powerful, authentic version of herself. But when she reconnected with her old friends, nothing had changed. They still teased her for being too sensitive, still joked about how she used to cry over everything. It was subtle, but it was constant. They didn't see who she had become. They only saw who she used to be. And the more she grew, the more it seemed to bother them. Eventually, Emily realized something. They weren't rejecting her. They were rejecting their own discomfort with change. And that was never her responsibility to carry. So how do you deal with people like this? Stop asking for permission to grow. Don't play small just to make others feel secure. Walk confidently in who you become. The right people will rise with you. The rest will cling to your past because they can't handle your present. Number 5, they don't respect your journey. Let's talk about one of the clearest signs that someone doesn't truly value you. They reduce you to a chapter you've already outgrown. No matter how far you've come, no matter how much you've changed, they still define you by who you used to be. They overlook your progress, ignore your growth, and stay stuck on a version of you that no longer exists. Here's the truth. If someone refuses to acknowledge your evolution, they don't respect your journey. Real respect means accepting that people can grow, that they can change, that they can become more than what they once were. But when someone keeps bringing up your past, not with understanding, but with judgment, it's not about honesty, it's about control. It's their way of keeping you in a box that makes them comfortable. A smaller version of you, one they can easily define, manage, and dismiss. This is where Stoic wisdom reminds us of what truly matters. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Judge not the man by his past, but by the direction of his stride." That's the essence of growth. What matters most isn't where you've been, it's where you're going. And anyone who truly respects you will see that. They'll honor your path, even if it's different from what they expected. They'll embrace your evolution, not resist it. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Sarah, went through a lot in her early life. She had some dark seasons, made mistakes, and took a few wrong turns. But she didn't stay there. She did the inner work, found healing, and rebuilt her life. Years later, she was grounded, wise, and deeply self-aware. But every time she visited certain relatives, they'd say things like, "You've changed so much. We remember when you used to be such a mess." Or, "Don't forget where you came from." At first, she laughed it off, but eventually it became clear. They didn't see the woman she had become. They only saw the girl she used to be. They weren't trying to connect. They were trying to keep her small. So how do you handle people like this? First, stop trying to convince them. If someone refuses to see your growth, that's their blindness, not your burden. Second, set boundaries. If they don't respect your journey, they don't get a front row seat to it. Number 6, they want to keep you stuck. Let's talk about one of the most subtle but damaging tactics people use. They bring up your past not to heal it, not to understand it, but to keep you stuck in it. Every time you try to move forward, they remind you of where you fell. Every time you find your voice, they echo your old mistakes. And it's not out of love, it's out of control. Here's the truth. Bringing up your past becomes their way of anchoring you in guilt. And as long as you feel guilty, you stay quiet. You question yourself. You hesitate to grow too loud, shine too bright, or move too far ahead, because they've convinced you that you don't deserve it, that you haven't earned the right to move on. But that's the game. They don't want you to rise, they want you to stay stuck. This is where Stoic wisdom slices through the fog. Epictetus said, "Guilt unearned is a chain forged by manipulation." Let that sink in. Not all guilt is real. Sometimes it's placed on you by others who benefit from your silence. When someone can keep you wrapped in shame for who you used to be, they control who you're allowed to become. But here's the truth they don't want you to realize. Your past may explain you, but it does not define you. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Daniel, had made mistakes in his past. He wasn't proud of all of them, but he'd taken responsibility, grown from them, and worked hard to become a better man. But one person in his life, his older brother, never let him forget. Every time Daniel spoke with confidence or pursued something new, his brother would bring up an old failure. Funny how you think you've got it all figured out now, huh? Don't get too proud. We all remember the old you. For a long time it worked. Daniel would shrink, pull back, and feel undeserving. But eventually he realized that guilt wasn't his anymore. He'd carried it long enough. And if someone still needed to hold it over him, it said more about their need for control than about his need for redemption. So how do you respond? First, recognize the manipulation. Real accountability leads to growth, not silence. Second, let go of guilt that no longer belongs to you. And third, walk boldly forward. You don't owe anyone your stagnation just to make them feel better about staying still. At the end of the day, you can't rise if you're still holding on to chains someone else forged for you. Let them fall and keep climbing. Number 7, they're testing your emotional weak spots. Let's talk about one of the most calculated reasons someone keeps bringing up your past. They're not reminiscing. They're not holding you accountable. They're testing you. Here's the truth. Mentioning your past is sometimes used to provoke a reaction. It's a subtle way to poke at your emotional weak spots, to see if you still flinch, still shrink, still carry guilt or shame from what you've already outgrown. They want to find the places where you're still healing so they can use it as leverage. It might come off like a joke or a harmless comment, but it's strategic, because if they can make you react, if they can make you explain, defend, or doubt yourself, they feel like they've found your pressure point, and once they know where to press, they'll keep pressing, every time they feel threatened, jealous, or insecure. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes your armor. Marcus Aurelius said, "He who cannot be provoked holds the highest power." That's the truth. The less you react, the more control you take back. If they can no longer push the old buttons, the game ends. Because real power isn't loud. It's calm. It's stillness in the face of someone trying to rattle your peace. Let me share a story. A guy I know, let's call him Alex, had made huge strides in his life. He used to be impulsive, quick-tempered, easy to bait. But he'd done the work. Therapy, reflection, mindset shifts. He'd built real self-control. But every now and then, someone from his past, especially one old friend, would drop a remark like, "Don't get too calm now. Remember when you used to flip out over everything?" At first, Alex felt the urge to react, to prove he wasn't that guy anymore. But then he paused and realized, this wasn't a conversation, it was a test. This person wasn't acknowledging his growth, they were trying to challenge it, so Alex did nothing. No defense, no reaction, just silence. And in that silence, he kept his power. So how do you deal with people like this? First, spot the pattern. When someone brings up your past with the intention to provoke, don't take the bait. Second, practice emotional stillness. Not everything deserves your energy. And finally, protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. At the end of the day, your strength isn't shown in how loudly you defend your past. It's shown in how calmly you outgrow it. And when they realize they can't provoke you anymore, they'll stop trying. If you believe this video can help others, give it a like. It helps the YouTube algorithm show it to more people. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful content coming your way. Drop your thoughts in the comments, I always read them, and I'll definitely reply.